With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
When I wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. When I go out, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. If I get drunk.
Welcome back to the Sooner Nation podcast. Man, I'm glad you're here to hang out with this. Kind of feels like the start is something new. Let's call it what it is. You look back at 2024, and I don't think as fans, we weren't asking for perfection, right? 2024, go back to September, we're not demanding a championship. I think what we wanted to see last season was progress. What we wanted to see was proof that Brent Venables had this program moving in the right direction. We wanted to see proof that Oklahoma wasn't just making a jump into the SEC, but they were ready to belong there. And we didn't get that. We didn't. Obviously, it was an abomination what we got in 2024. But when you go back to Saturday night, now you've got something different. And again, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about FCS. We'll get into that. But in a 35-3 win over Illinois State, I think we saw what we wanted to see a year ago. Not perfection, not dominance in every phase, but something incredibly valuable if you're a fan of this program. I think what you saw in that game was a foundation. Now, the story of the night, it's the story of really of the season. And I think look, we're 1 week in, but I think this is going to be the week in and week out story. It's John Mateer. He didn't just manage the game for Oklahoma. And really, again, FCS, I get it. But we didn't know what to expect from him. We knew what we hoped for. But Washington State and Norman, Oklahoma are two different animals. And you saw a quarterback who didn't just manage the game. He pretty much owned it. Almost 400 passing yards, 4 total touchdowns. And to me, it was the poise that I was looking for. It's that poise that kind of makes you go, okay, all right, we've got our guy. We found our guy. What we saw in that one game, and look, Temple last year wasn't fantastic, okay? It wasn't a great team. This team that Oklahoma just beat would give Temple a run for its money, if not beat them last year. But Mateer didn't just break Baker Mayfield's record for the most passing yards in his Oklahoma football debut. He did it and pretty much made it look easy. And I think that tells us something about him and the system that's around him. But here's the bigger point. Mateer's performance, it wasn't just a one-man show. This offense, with Ben Arbuckle pulling the strings, it looked sharper, faster, and deeper than anything we saw in 2024. You got 9 different receivers who caught passes. You got Keontez Lewis, Deion Burks. Look, it's the second year for Deion Burks, but really, does last year count with the injuries that he went through? And those guys together, they looked good. Jaren Kanak looked like a natural weapon at tight end. I was surprised. And even at running back, you got, the true freshman, Troy Blaylock, was the best running back, looked the best at least, on the field. I mean, he showed flashes. Unfortunately, he left with injury, but it did feel like offensively the pieces were falling into place. Now, obviously, there is an elephant in the room, which is the running game, since we're talking about Blaylock. 103 yards on 32 carries. I don't feel like it's good enough. You don't feel like it's good enough. Ben Arbuckle didn't feel like it's good enough, regardless of who's missing on the offensive line. And as much as Mateer stole the show on Saturday night, we all know that Oklahoma, they're not going to be able to throw their way to a championship. And I think as we're talking about storylines from week to week, that's going to be another big storyline that lingers as the Michigan game is looming. But what about the other side of the ball? Brent Venables' defense, they look like a Brent Venables defense. They were fast, disciplined, suffocating. Illinois State had no rhythm. They had no space. They had no answers. And again, stop screaming FCS at me, because I get it. And yes, the competition is going to get tougher from here on out. But I'm looking at the execution. I'm looking at the tackling. I'm looking at the way the safeties moved around. That's the kind of defensive performance that's a carryover from last year. And you really, when you look at who they lost, it answers some questions. So here's what this episode is about. I want to break down why Oklahoma's win over Illinois State was more than just a tune-up. I want to talk about why it felt like the start of an identity. An offense with a quarterback who looks like he's the guy. A defense with a head coach calling plays again and putting his stamp on it. And yeah, a run game that still has to prove itself if this team's going to survive the SEC. Because make no mistake here, all right? Illinois State, that was just the warm-up. Michigan's the test. Next week, Norman, Oklahoma becomes the proving ground. And by the time the clock hits 0 next Saturday night, we're going to have a much more clear idea of what this Oklahoma team really is. So hang out, stick with us. We're going to dive into Mateer's record-setting debut. We're going to look at how Venables' defense suffocated the Redbirds and preview really kind of the heavyweight fight that's coming to town. We'll get more into that midweek. But for now, I mean, the theme of this episode is pretty simple. Oklahoma football looks like they've found their foundation.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Life gets easier with great assists, and State Farm is here to dish one your way. Get in touch over the phone or on the app to get the teammate you need. State Farm with the assist. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability and eligibility vary by state.
All right, so let's talk about the game kind of overall, just on its own. And let me apologize for my voice. I'm kind of battling COVID here, but it's okay. It's not contagious through a podcast, so you got nothing to worry about. Look, a 35-3 win over Illinois State on Saturday night. It's probably wasn't the jaw-dropping, scoreboard-shattering performance that some fans wanted. But again, we talked about that foundation. That I think is what we needed, right? And going back to what we talked about in that opening segment, after 2024, going into year number 4 now of Brent Venables, it had to feel different for us. It had to look different. Because this is the reset, right? This is the statement season. This is something not just to show, Sooner Nation, but really to show the rest of the country. Oklahoma's ready to hang with the big boys, so to speak. And you saw that. I think you saw that foundational moment. And I think it starts, once again, with John Mateer. I thought he was sensational. I mean, really, 400 total yards of offense, 3 touchdowns through the air, 1 more on the ground. In the process, he broke Baker Mayfield's school record for most passing yards in a debut. 392 yards, all right? That's Baker Mayfield made his debut against Akron in 2015. And so for all of the comparisons that we had through the offseason, there it is one more time. He is going to continue to draw those comparisons, I believe, as he lays himself out there for this team. But it's not just in the numbers. You look at his poise, you look at his command, the way he carried himself with his offense on the field, on the sideline, the moments. You could just see it. You could almost feel it with this guy. Not just another talented quarterback stepping into an offensive system at the University of Oklahoma. Like I said in the opening segment, he was a guy who looked like, quote, the guy at the University of Oklahoma. And, talking about the record books, after the game, he said, it's awesome. It's a blessing. You go into the record books in game one. It's a super good feeling. Yeah, look, it was more than a feeling. I feel like that should be a song. It was exactly what Oklahoma needed. And for all the talk this offseason about Ben Arbuckle's new offensive system, I think we needed to see it come alive. And the frustration was there. Early the first two sluggish drives to start the game. I don't know about you, but look, I would not have blamed you. And I think I was almost there myself. Here we go again. But they did something that we really never saw them do last year, is that the offense found rhythm. And man, once they did, the Redbirds, there was no answer. Mateer was able to spread the ball around 9 different receivers. In many ways, he showed the same dual threat ability that made him the number 1 ranked transfer quarterback in the spring. And he and both Arbuckle looked comfortable. They looked natural. And they, obviously they look like they've been running this offense together for years, because they have. But I think what stood out to me the most was balance. It wasn't a one-man show. Now, Arbuckle was the guy pulling the strings. Mateer was the star of the show. But then you had Keontez Lewis, transferred from Southern Illinois. He seemed unstoppable. 9 catches, 119 yards, 2 touchdowns. You don't think he looked like a future star for this team? Deion Burks looked like the healthy version of Deion Burks that we saw at the beginning of 2024. 7 catches, 88 yards, and a score. A one-hander down the sideline. There's a highlight reel. Jaren Kanak. How is he going to do from tight end to from linebacker to tight end? Right. I know he had the early fumble, but I feel like he bounced back in a big way. He ended up with 5 catches, 90 yards. He didn't score. That was one of the things we had pegged for the pregame podcast. But, he did look like an athletic mismatch waiting to happen, and that's what you wanted to see. John Mateer had weapons at Washington State, but man, look, this supporting cast he has at Oklahoma, it's got to be the deepest of his career. And I think once they really get everyone healthy, hopefully they get everyone healthy, I feel like that's going to be scary for some SEC defensive coordinators. But we do have to talk about the elephant in the room. The rushing attack, or maybe more accurately, the lack of a rushing game. For all the fireworks we saw through the air, the ground game, let's call it what it was. It was disappointing. 103 yards on 32 carries. That's 3.2 yards per carry if you're trying to do the math. And when we talk about this was an FCS opponent, man, that's just not going to cut it. Now, Torrey Blaylock, I mean, he was the bright spot. 8 carries, 44 yards, and a rushing score. He showed burst. He showed vision. He showed fight. But then what we didn't want to see happened. He left in the third quarter with a shoulder injury. And, I don't know. There's nothing on him been released to this point on Sunday night, and I don't know when it will, if it will, because they don't have to do the injury reports until conference play begins. So we're unclear on him. And we probably won't have an idea until the offense takes the field against Michigan on Saturday night. But look, I am a Javonte Barnes guy. I love he's a program guy. I love his loyalty. I love him. But I mean, look, maybe I misread the spring and the summer, because I thought Barnes was going to be a guy who was supposed to take that next step. 9 yards on 7 carries. And I know a lot of people are worried about Jaden Ott. I'm not. I mean, I'm not yet, at least. He didn't touch the ball until the fourth quarter, and then it was a minus 3-yard carry when he did. I'm not worried about that. I don't believe that we saw the real Jaden Ott. But man, 9 yards from Javonte Barnes, and he looks slow. That worries me. And I get it. I mean, Oklahoma's offensive line, not at full strength, missing multiple starters. And that's fair context. And when we go into a specific segment on the offense, we'll come back to this. But the reality is this: if Oklahoma wants to compete for be in the conversation for a conference championship, they've got to run the ball. And the defensive front they're going to see next week, it's elite, it's good. But that's the kind of stuff they're going to see week in and week out in conference play. The run game has to improve, period. I mean, there's no way around it. And even Ben Arbuckle knows it. I mean, he even said after the game, you've got to establish the line of scrimmage. You can't give the ball to the other team, and you can't beat yourself with pre-snap penalties. There's plenty to grow from. But he started is you got to establish the line of scrimmage. And I said this in the opening segment. I'm going to say it again. Mateer can't throw this team to a championship by himself. Balance matters. We talked about it last week. Balance is important, and right now it's missing. But let's also not forget the other side of the ball. This was Brent Venables' defense on display, with the man taking back the play calling duties after Zach Alley left for West Virginia. This defense just came out flying. Illinois State with 151 yards of total offense, only 34 through the air. That's suffocating, right? I know they found some success on the ground, but it never amounted to anything. I'm not worried if you can't score points. You can have a guy rip off a few, 10-plus yard runs, but if it doesn't result in anything, I'm not bothered by it. The only points that Illinois State got was from the John Mateer turnover, and that was a short field. Oklahoma's defense, they were relentless. And Brent Venables had every right to be proud afterwards. But if you watched anything post-game, you could tell he wasn't satisfied, and that's fine, because this defense, the way it played Saturday, looks like it has the potential to keep Oklahoma in games just like last year. And then this offense, I think it's easier to get kind of in a rhythm offensively. It's easier to catch up offensively than it is defensively. And this is what we've been waiting for. I mean, one of my favorite moments, I keep going back to the offense, and we will have individual segments, offense and defense. I promise next segment we'll talk only defense. But one of my favorite moments came after Kanak's fumble, right? I mean, look, here's this kid, first game on offense. He makes a mistake. He gives Illinois State a little bit of momentum early in the game. But who was right there in his ear? John Mateer. Calming him down, telling him, look, man, it was one mistake. It can't faze you. It was an effort mistake. It happens. We didn't see that from a quarterback last year. That's leadership. That's what separates quarterbacks who put up numbers from quarterbacks who win games. When we keep making the Baker Mayfield comparison, that's what we're talking about. And what Kanak bounced back, 90 yards. He could be, like, I don't know what to expect. I didn't know what to expect. And I don't really know what to expect moving forward. But, man, I think maybe he's an offensive weapon that we really didn't see coming. And look, let's talk about the team, okay? Let's talk about the opponent. Because I know some people walked out of that stadium. Some people turned off their TV Saturday night thinking that's not impressive enough. We should have beaten them by 60. Caleb, love him for all that he is. He, I think, had Oklahoma scoring 63 points in his prediction when we did our preview podcast. But here's the reality of the situation. Illinois State is a disciplined, playoff caliber FCS team. Right, they're not at Oklahoma's level. I get it. But there are FBS schools, and I believe FBS schools on Oklahoma's schedule that this team would beat. And that I don't think this is the worst opponent on Oklahoma's non-conference schedule. I don't think they are. They may be the second best opponent on Oklahoma's non-conference schedule after Michigan. And they were disciplined. They didn't beat themselves. 0 turnovers, only 2 penalties. I mean, it's not a cupcake. I know we want it to be a cupcake, but it's not. And yet Oklahoma, despite 2 turnovers of their own, they still won this game with 32 points. And that's what talent looks like. That's what depth looks like. No, the final score wasn't gaudy, but the performance, it was meaningful because for the first time, like I said, Oklahoma looked like they had an identity. They've got an offense that's built around Mateer's arm and Arbuckle's scheme. They've got a defense that has Brent Venables' stamp on it again. And yeah, they've got a run game that needs work, but there's potential there. And going back, it wasn't perfection, but it was a foundation. But you look at next week. I mean, look, this season won't be defined by Illinois State. It could be defined by what happens with Michigan in town. That's the game. That's the test. I think that's what we'll find out if John Mateer's debut, the brilliance that he showed, can it hold up against one of the best defenses they'll face this season? That's what we're going to find out about this offensive line. That's what we're going to find out about the running backs. Are they ready for SEC-type competition? Because Michigan's going to give them the best test. But man, look, they were so mediocre last year. And Saturday night gave Sooner Nation something that we've been craving. It gave us hope, right? It gave us hope that this quarterback is the real deal. It gave us hope that this coaching staff's vision is finally materializing. It gave us hope that Oklahoma can once again look like Oklahoma. And I feel like in that sense, right, just in that alone, 35-3 was more than enough. So that's where we're starting. Obviously, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into Mateer's performance. We're going to look at Pro Football Focus grades on the offensive line. We're going to talk about the defense. Stick with us. We're here on the Sooner Nation podcast.
Gatorade is the #1 proven electrolyte blend designed to hydrate better than water. So you can lose more sweat and raise your game. Gatorade. Is it in you?
All right, so let's switch gears just a little bit. We spent the majority of this podcast up to this point talking about John Mateer and the spark that he gave the offense. But, I mean, if we're going to be honest, look, for years, Oklahoma football has lived with a frustrating truth. It's that the defense just hasn't been good enough, right? It's been the running joke. It's been a tired narrative. Oh, you can score with anyone, but they can't stop anyone. And the heart of that criticism, maybe more than any other position group, has been the safeties. Now, we saw that begin to shift last year where the defense stepped forward and the offense stepped back. But if you think about this, since 2012, this was a crazy stat. Since 2012, only 2 Oklahoma safeties have been drafted into the NFL. Only 2. In over a decade, for a program that churns out offensive stars and quarterbacks like clockwork, to me, that's a stunning number. And it's been a glaring hole every time the Sooners matched up with elite competition. But on Saturday night, in this win over Illinois State, we saw maybe the clearest sign yet that things have turned. Because, man, Peyton Bowen and Reggie Powers, they looked every bit the part of difference makers. And then when you pair that success with Brent Venables taking back over the play calling duties, I mean, you start to feel like this defense might be actually carrying its weight from last year to this year, and now they're taking another step forward. Now let's start with Peyton Bowen. I mean, everybody knows his name. He's the 5-star recruit, had the huge signing day win for Oklahoma after he flipped from Oregon. He came in with a lot of expectations. I mean, sky-high expectations. And last year as a freshman, he flashed at times. But, I mean, look, he had a nagging injury. It slowed him down. But he didn't look slow Saturday night. He looked like the player that we felt we were promised. He looked confident. He looked fast. He looked efficient. He allowed just one catch for just 3 yards. That's it. I mean, he was involved in a key defensive stop. And the most important thing is he didn't miss a single tackle. Think about, I mean, how long has it been since we can say that about a safety at Oklahoma? No whiffs, 0 mental lapses, just solid and reliable. And then right there alongside of him was Reggie Powers. He looked every bit the part as well. And I mean, you had to, gosh, man, I was so stoked about Reggie Powers. Now, he was targeted twice. He gave up 0 yards. And then he himself chipped in with a couple of huge defensive stops. And just like Peyton Bowen, 0 missed tackles. 0 missed tackles from your starting safeties combined. But it wasn't just what they did individually. I think you also have to look at how Brent Venables used them. So these 2 guys rotated between strong safety, the cheater role, and it gave the defense versatility. It gave the defense, it made them unpredictable, and it really kind of gave them a look that Illinois State couldn't figure out. And Pro Football Focus tells the story here. Reggie Powers, he lined up at 10 different spots throughout this game. 10. Bowen appeared at 7 different alignments. Guys, that's we say the thing, he's playing chess while you're playing checkers. That's exactly what it was. Brent Venables was playing chess. And he's moving pieces around and never letting the quarterback feel comfortable. And even after the game, Brent Venables said, just seeing those 2 guys move around and not miss a beat, that's what you want. It opens up the whole playbook. And you have to be excited about this defense. Because that's the key right there. For years, Oklahoma's defense felt limited. You couldn't disguise, you couldn't rotate, you couldn't play aggressive coverage because someone was going to blow an assignment. And even into last year, when they started to make that step forward, you still had that concern. But not Saturday night. It looked different. It looked like a defense with options. Now, one of the biggest issues in the secondary hasn't been top end talent. They've been there. It's been depth. How many times over the last 10 plus years have we seen one injury completely unravel this secondary? But Saturday night, I think also showed a new reality. Because you had Bowen, you had Powers, but you also had Robert Spears Jennings. You've got Michael Boganowski, Jaden Hardy, the Robinson kid. They all got snaps, and they held their own. That's not by accident. Venables made it clear after the game. The goal is to build a defense where the standard doesn't drop when backups come in the game. And when you rotate 29 defenders in one game, 29 guys, and the level of play stayed constant. It stayed high. This isn't just a first string story anymore when it comes to defense. They've got depth. And I think that we should talk about Brent Venables himself, because I think there was a noticeable difference in the energy and the communication with him calling the plays again. Now, we all know the tired story. Zach Alley left for West Virginia in the offseason. And Venables like, you know what? I'll take this back. I'm the best defensive coordinator in the country. I'll take it back. And, man, it paid off. Like we said, Illinois State managed just 151 total yards of offense. Just 34 passing yards for the entire game. And the only points came gifted of John Mateer. But again, even at that moment, the defense forced a 3 and out. That's it. And I love this statement from Brock Spack, the head coach of Illinois State. Here's what he said. He goes, "We lost the game in the passing game and on both sides of the ball." Yeah, let me translate that for you. Our receivers couldn't breathe against Oklahoma's secondary. But this game wasn't about just the safeties. Obviously, with the defensive performance this dynamic, there were other standouts. And start with true freshman quarterback Cortland Gilroy. All the camp we heard, all the buzz we heard about him coming out of fall camp, I think he justified it Saturday night. He played physical. He stuck with receivers. He broke up multiple passing lanes. Venables said after the game, he looked like he belonged out there. And again, let's be real. You don't often hear that about a true freshman corner playing in his first college game. There are studs on that defensive line. Taylor Wayne's not a guy we talked about a lot, but he was disruptive. He got himself a sack. He delivered the hit that knocked out the Illinois State quarterback. He made a statement. That was a statement game for him. Of course, it was R. Mason Thomas. He led the team in snaps. He played with his hair on fire. Every bit as explosive off the edge and setting the tone that we expected from him. So this defensive front that Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis have put together, they didn't need blitz help to get pressure. And that's kind of what Brent Venables wants. Now again, okay, stop screaming. I hear you. No one's going to confuse Illinois State with Michigan or Georgia or, I know Georgia's not an Oklahoma schedule, but there were other giants out there. And we all get that. This wasn't the biggest test that Oklahoma's going to face. We get that. But I don't think this was about who they played. It was about how they played. Tackling was sharp. Coverages were disciplined. Players moved around without confusion, and Brent Venables mixed in basic alignments with disguised looks, and it worked. Illinois State just went 1 for 11 on third down, and they averaged 3.3 yards per play across the game. That's not just good defense, that's dominant defense. And dominance, even against an FCS team, matters. Because in years past, we didn't always see this. In years past, sometimes we saw lapses, even last year. Sometimes we saw confusion. We saw missed tackles. We saw blown coverages. But on Saturday night, we didn't see any of that. So what does this mean for next week? Well, we know. We know that Michigan is a completely different beast. They've got a physical running game. They've got an NFL caliber offensive line. They've got wideouts who can stretch the field. They're going to do things that Illinois State never could do. So for Oklahoma's safeties, that means Saturday night was just the easy part. Against Michigan, they won't just need to be solid. They'll need to be game changers. They'll need to be difference makers. But look, for the first time in a long time, You can see the potential here. You can see that the signs that Oklahoma has a safety room that's not a liability. They are a strength. You can see a group that's deep, it's versatile, and probably, most importantly, they're reliable. And Bowen and Powers, they're young, so they're going to continue to grow. Robert Spears-Jennings, he's going to stay steady. And when you add in the guys like Boganowski and Hardy, they're going to keep coming along. And then for the first time, I think in over a decade, Oklahoma may have solved a problem that's haunted them. And if that's true, this isn't just progress from a good year in 2024 into 2025. This is transformative. All right, we got one segment left here on the Sooner Nation podcast. Please make sure, if you like the content we're putting out here, would you subscribe? Would you, if you're hitting us up on YouTube, if you're hitting us up on Spotify, Apple Podcast, wherever you're finding us, iTunes. iTunes, is that really a thing anymore? TuneIn is what I meant to say. Hit us up. Let us know you like the show. Let us know your thoughts, your comments. We really appreciate it. We'll be right back.
Hey, it's Paris. I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
All right, Sooner Nation, let's close this out by going back to the side of the ball that we're used to celebrating. That's the offense. Look, for the first time since 2023, this offensive attack doesn't look like it's a work in progress. It doesn't feel like a group searching for identity. I mean, look, we're only one game in, but it looks like a machine. And as we've already stated over and over again in this episode, the center of this machine is John Mateer. He didn't just have a good debut for Oklahoma. He made history. We've talked about the yards, 416 total. 3 touchdowns for the air, 1 touchdown on the ground. And 392 of those yards came through the air. That's what broke the record. That's what broke Baker Mayfield's record. But that's not just a strong start. We like to say this, in Sooner Nation, that's planting a flag in OU lore on day one. And we talked about what he said. It's a blessing. You go into the record books in game one. It's a super good feeling. And I think maybe you didn't realize this, but I think we needed to know that. We needed to hear that. Because I think it shows a young man who understands the moment. But I also think there's a bigger picture here that for what he sees. And like the defense, it wasn't just about the numbers, it was how he did it. He was calm, he was decisive, he was sharp in Arbuckle's system. He completed 30 of 37 passes. He distributed the ball to 9 different receivers. And he thrived in the intermediate game, hitting guys in stride, putting them in position to get yards after the catch. He looked like he was in complete command. And then, that leadership showed up with the Jaren Kanak fumble early in the first half. You didn't see Mateer sulk. You didn't see him frustrated. You didn't see him lose focus. You saw him go straight to Kanak and fix it. So this isn't like a game manager type situation. It's not just a quarterback running an offense. It's a quarterback setting the tone to be a leader for this team. Yeah, he's steady, but he's also explosive. He also has control and command of the team. And he has their respect. And that's what Oklahoma needed at this position. Now, we talked about this earlier segments. He wasn't doing this all by himself. Now, while he's the one writing his name in the record books, there were some new faces that made sure to share that spotlight with him. Keontez Lewis, I think I Satinha was the guy I was looking for on Saturday night. And so I was so happy. I was so pleasantly surprised with what I saw from Keontez Lewis. 9 catches, 119 yards. He looked like a go-to guy. He was able to find space against zone. He won matchups in man. And he proved to be a reliable option when Mateer needs to look his way. Deion Burks, I wanted to see. I mean, we got such a limited sample size of him in 2024. 7 catches, 88 yards, a touchdown. And I think like every time Oklahoma needed a chain mover, he kind of seemed to be in the mix there. Jaren Kanak, bigger debut than I expected. I'm not going to keep talking about the fumble. It's there. I'd rather talk about the way he bounced back. Total of 5 catches and 90 yards. Including that was a 48-yard reception that I think kind of showed us why this staff trusts him enough to switch his positions, but then also hand him the starting job. It was like it's the kind of resiliency I think you want to see from a guy making that transition. And then I think Torrey Blaylock is another big story. 8 carries, 44 yards, and a touchdown. He had a 16-yard reception on 3rd and 14. So you got a freshman stepping up into a moment with confidence, but then, there's that downside. He left with what appeared to be a shoulder injury. And, I think moving forward, his status is, it's more than just cloudy, but, man, his burst, his vision, we saw a good glimpse of Oklahoma's future. So the bottom line here is that this wasn't just Mateer and one receiver putting up numbers. This was a balanced attack through the air. 9 different guys making plays. And that's the depth you want. That's the kind of depth that makes the passing game dangerous all season long. But we know it wasn't a perfect offensive performance because the red flags began to pop up all over this running game. Only 103 yards on 32 carries, 3.2 yards per rush. And man, that's not good enough. It's just not. And granted, some of it's about health. Oklahoma was missing both starting tackles, Derek Simmons and Michael Fasusi. Left guard Heath Ozeda was out. So that's a lot of beef missing up front, if you will. But you got to think, even against an FCS opponent like Illinois State, you have to expect Oklahoma to impose their will in the trenches, and that didn't happen. So obviously, I think this offensive line's got a lot of work to do still. Javonte Barnes struggled. I talked about it. 9 yards on 7 carries. Jaden Ott was a non-factor. But the offensive line, let's be honest. We got it right. Don't we have to find that one spot to be critical? And I think it's more than well deserved here because it looked a lot like last year. It looked inconsistent. The running lanes, they weren't there. The push, it wasn't there. Now, to his credit, Ben Arbuckle didn't try to force it. He leaned on what he had. He leaned on what he knew. He leaned on Mateer's arm. And he kept the concepts vanilla. He made sure that they didn't show too much ahead of Michigan. But the lack of a running game, and this is the kind of thing that looms large when you start thinking about the Wolverines next week, particularly with their front 7. Now, let's give credit where it's due. Arbuckle's debut as a play caller was impressive. Overall, it's an offense that racked up 495 total yards, scored on 5 of his first 7 drives, and it looked efficient in doing so. And that word efficient, that's one Oklahoma fans haven't been able to use about their offense in a while. And you could see the air raid roots in how Mateer carved up that defense with the intermediate throws. But Arbuckle didn't let it get predictable, and that has been a big thing. Motion, tempo, spread alignments. He kept Illinois State off balance really without needing to pull too deep into the playbook. So it wasn't about being flashy. It was about being effective. And that's what I think the Sooners needed. So what's the big takeaway here with the offense? I think it's pretty simple that Oklahoma has found its quarterback after not having one for 2024. I think we saw enough to know that John Mateer is the real deal and that Arbuckle's system is tailor-made for the type of skill set that he has. And I think together they give this offense an identity again. The passing game, it looks deep, it looks balanced, it looks dangerous. But the running game, I mean, that's going to be the hurdle. Because if they can't establish more balance, teams like Michigan, the teams that thrive on controlling the trenches, basically the entire SEC, they're going to make things tough. And next week against the Wolverines, that's going to be the first real litmus test. It'd be awesome if Mateer could put up 400 yards again, but I don't think that's what you want. You want them to get more from the offensive line. You want them to get more from these running backs. You want them to give them something more than what you saw Saturday night. Otherwise, I think Michigan is just going to pin its ears back and they're going to make life difficult. But for now, for this moment, I think we as fans should feel good. Because like I said, I mean, for the first time in a while, it feels like this offense has, clarity. They've got a quarterback who's more than capable. They've got weapons who can hurt you in different ways. And they've got a play caller who knows how to maximize all of it. So if the ground game catches up, I do believe that this could be one of the most dangerous offenses in the entire SEC. So, yeah, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Sooner Nation podcast. Thanks again for hanging out with me. Obviously, we'll be back later on the week to break down Michigan, see if this team's ready for some primetime action. But until then, have an amazing week, everybody.
I'm gonna be the man.